I want to borrow money from you at 0% interest, and I'm willingly paying you back in 100 years from now. I mean, for astronomical totals.
Billions
euros. All right. So Charles and I have been talking about green finance, and there's nobody better able to discuss this than you, of course. So, I mean, we've been talking about it. The world is on the precipice, and at this point, you can't do anything unless you pay for it. I mean, China is going to put, $640 billion a year through 2060 in order to meet all of these goals, the 2030, 2060 goals. The question is, how do you do that?
And additionally, just thinking about the needs of developing countries, which are moving very quickly into the internet age, the electronics age, they need electricity, they need power. What do you do with countries in Africa or India and Pakistan and Bangladesh? Are you going to tell the population, sorry, you cannot have electricity?
You're going to go, what can Luxembourg do for us?
Well, that's of course a good question. Luxembourg being the second most important investment center in the world, just after New York, and we don't have any aspirations or ambitions. Second most important.
What happened to London?
Well, I'm just talking about investment funds. But London decided to go. As a matter of fact, when London decided to go for the Brexit, to get out of the European Union, Luxembourg decided, and it was very clear from the beginning, that we are not going to roll out the red carpet for the experts from London. No, we decided to cooperate, to continue our good cooperation with London, because we know Luxembourg on its own cannot replace London. London will remain a global financial center.
Yes, whenever I want to wash money, I always go to London. I mean, it's just, Luxembourg, it's a little bit difficult. Anyway, so you have to thank Boris Johnson, right?
In a way, yes, because due to his decision, after all, we gained something around 80, a bit more than 80 different insurance companies and investment funds.
Fund management companies moved to Luxembourg.
Exactly. They decided to relocate to Luxembourg because they want to stay within the European Union market, one of the strongest and largest markets you have over there. And that's why they had to make a choice, and they went to Luxembourg.
Well, are they paying taxes?
They are paying a lot of taxes. and we are
so there are some benefits here.
Yes, we are very grateful to them.
But I mean, green. I mean, we were talking about the fact that they just floated a zero interest bond. Several. I mean, for astronomical totals.
Billions
of euros. I mean, how does that work? I want to borrow money from you at 0% interest, and I'm willingly paying you back in 100 years from now.
Well, maybe not 100.
Yeah, maybe not 100. How is that working? How did Luxembourg become the center of this?
Of course, we built up some expertise, combined the newly developed expertise in green finance together with our reputation as an investment fund center. And so we managed to bring together people who are interested in long-term investments, but they are obviously lacking the investment opportunities, for example, in Europe. And of course, in Europe, you still have negative interest rates, so you are losing money. And then on the other hand, you have here in China, you have a lot of very interesting long-term green projects. It's all about green development. And they are looking for investors to sell their products. And that's where Luxembourg, as a kind of bridge, tried to bring together investors seeking for investment opportunities and issuers here from China who had the projects.
Give us a sense. Who's providing the money and who is...
That's a very important point, because most of the Europeans are now registered in Luxembourg and have offices there. Most of them now have a green mandate. 15%, 12%, 10%, 20%.
The sovereign wealth funds.
Including the sovereign wealth funds. But the mandates now go way beyond sovereign wealth funds. It's not just Norway, but or the German sovereign wealth fund, but many private, even I think retirement funds,
Exactly.
now have very specific, more than mandates. It's almost a diktat. That a
But
certain percentage
isn't
has
this
to-
going against everything that we know about capital markets?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that I put money in and I have no intention of making any money on it. I mean,
No,
this
I don't
sounds-
think.
this
I don't
sounds
think.
socialist.
I don't think it's a question of. It sounds socialist, but I don't think it's a question of not making any money, because, at least in China's case, you have very specific things, projects, which the government is backing to turn certain industries green. There are many industries which are very highly polluting: steel, cement, petrochemicals, and so on. Now, there are new technologies could be implemented that would make them more efficient, reduce pollution, reduce carbon
I
emission.
see. So some of these green bonds are actually being recycled back into technologies that are being offered perhaps by some of the countries whose
Right.
sovereign wealth funds were involved.
Right.
Oh, smart.
Can.
I didn't realize that.
Can do.
Yeah. And who's the target? Who has gotten the biggest tranche of money so far?
What about the 30 billion euros? Is that the EU, European
Oh, yes.
Central Bank?
Yes, that was, as a matter of fact, that was a green bond issued by the European Commission in the context of the so-called Green Deal. I mean, the economic recovery plan that has been decided by the European Union, and the European Commission, together with the European Investment Bank, also located in Luxembourg. So they issued last October the single largest green bond worldwide, with a volume of roughly 20 billion euros. And that again, it was issued in Luxembourg on the so-called Luxembourg Green Exchange. And if you're asking me who is investing, well, I mean, it's the usual suspects, I would say. It's the pension funds, it's the investment banks, because they are looking for that kind of investment opportunities. Because there we are speaking about transitional finance.
Right.
We have to make sure that these industries are redeveloping, are reinventing themselves with a view to green development. At that point of time, they are not ready, or most of them are perhaps not ready to issue or eligible for green bonds, but still we have to make sure that we also develop a specific targeted financial segment for these kind of industries. That's the so-called transitional finance, transition towards green. And so there are almost, I would say, endless opportunities in that context.
Okay, so let's get the 24-karat question is, what's the measuring stick? How do you know if it's green? How is it eligible?
That's of course the biggest challenge. First of all, we have to make sure that we are avoiding greenwashing. Greenwashing means we just say this is a green bond and we sell it as a green
My
bond.
personal jet is a green investment.
Exactly.
It consumes less fuel than the last jet, therefore, right?
Especially from London to Paris.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm going to fly to Luxembourg from now on.
Okay, even better.
No, but seriously, I mean, there's a lot of concern out there that
Exactly.
This is being
But this, what
manipulated.
you described, is a lot of concern based on my experience. Wall Street bankers can turn on a dime. There's a lot of greenwashing coming out of New York.
Yeah, but it's all creating this virtuous cycle. There has to be a technology or some project which is going to actually have an environmental impact.
New and renewable sources of energy.
And then you have to have the transitional finance to get it up and running. And then this is takeout finance. This is the long term. How long a term are we talking about? Are we talking about bonds that last for 30 years, 40 years, 10 years?
Oh yes, I would say we are going on the longer term, meaning at least 20 years, 30 years, depending on the different projects they are financing. But you are very right. I mean, it's all about having common criteria. That's what we call the so-called taxonomy. meaning that we all have a common understanding of what we mean by green and which kind of categories fall, economic activities fall within these different green shades, if I may say so. So there are dark green bonds, there are green bonds, and so on. And
how about a white bond? I have some pet
oh, that's a different story.
There's a very interesting aspect from what Ambassador said about how investment banks in Luxembourg also got into the green side. What I've found is investment banks see another opportunity. They have high net worth individuals, wealth management. Increasingly, high net worth individuals, those interested in green, are allocating portions of their own portfolio into green. So the investment banks need products to sell.
There's not much, they're not originating because some bank can't just declare this is a green bond, right?
That's the biggest issue today in China as well. The standards by which you measure its greenness.
Yes.
There's no international standard.
There's no. How did Luxembourg come up with a standard that says, okay, this is the one that's good for us and the European Union?
We are way too small for that, for being a standard setter in that regard. But what is even more important is there is a very rich and ongoing cooperation between the European Union and China in this regard. So no later than at the end of last year, both sides, meaning the European Union and China, decided on a so-called common ground for taxonomy, meaning we have established each one on its side a catalog of activities that we are considering to be green.
So to simplify, if there's a green technology out there that is acceptable to the EU and China, et cetera, and they say, yes, this would be eligible for takeout long-term green bond financing, that's what's going to really push it over the line. Because then when I'm estimating, oh, what is this going to cost and what's going to my return and my things like this, I really need to know my financing costs. So in advance. So the people who are selling the technology are in fact going to be make money, and they're going to be paying wages, and this is part of the multiplier. So it's not exactly, from what I'm hearing from you, it's not exactly like, oh, we're just giving away money, as long as you say it's green.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.